Warning: the following episode contains elements of horror that may be unsuitable for listeners under the age of 13. Listener discretion is advised.
You're listening to Beyond the Bizarre, 7 Nights of Terror.
Hey everyone, welcome back to Beyond the Bizarre podcast. I'm Brianna, your host, here with the second night of our Halloween special, 7 Nights of Terror. I hope you guys all enjoyed the episode yesterday about the Dead Children's Playground and the Hug and Molly legend from the state of Alabama. As I have another urban legend for you all from the southern part of the United States. So if you guys recall yesterday, I had said that many of the best ghost stories, urban legends, lore come from the southern part of the country, in my opinion anyway. Once again, not to say that there aren't any good ghost stories from like the western part or the northeastern, Midwest, what have you. Not that there aren't any good ghost stories on that part. It's just most of the really creepy ones, my favorite at least, come from the south. But at the same time, I'm also southern, so it may just be my own personal bias. But anyway, I would like to share with you guys an urban legend from the state of Texas, more specifically from Terrell, Texas. And this urban legend is known as the Candy Lady. The Candy Lady is a woman by the name of Clara Crane, born in 1871. Clara married Leonard Gilbert Crane, an older farm owner. It was not long after the marriage that Clara gave birth to Marcella, nicknamed Marcy. In 1893, at the age of 5, Marcy died in the result of a tragic farming accident. She was in the care of her father when the accident occurred, but it was later revealed that he was drinking at the time of the accident. Clara had blamed her husband for the death of their daughter and became distant from him. Although both Clara and Leonard were found innocent of any foul play in the death of Marcy, Clara still held great resentment towards her husband. Clara was accused of poisoning her husband back in 1895 by lacing some caramel candies with some type of poison, effectively killing him. A day after his passing, a neighbor had stopped by to check in and found Clara in a frenzied state while building a fire next to her home. This provoked the neighbor to contact local authorities. The sheriff, Fred Spring, had arrived and Clara became super aggressive, which resulted in her being taken into custody. Upon her arrest, Clara ended up going to trial and was facing murder in the first degree. Life in prison was the best sentence, but she pled that she was suffering from grief-induced mania at the time of the murder of her husband. With this plea, she was hoping to be sent to an asylum instead of prison. Clara was convicted of first-degree murder of her husband and was sent to an asylum known as the North Texas Lunatic Asylum, which is present-day Terrell State Hospital. About 1 year into her sentence, in 1896, Clara used torn bed sheets to make a doll in which she named Marcy, after her late daughter. While in the hospital, Clara wrote her sister a letter, which read, Dearest Aggie, I am elated. I have been informed by Dr. Matthews that Marcy and I will be returning home in less than 3 weeks. As you can imagine, Marcy can barely contain her excitement. Every night, she asks, "Is tomorrow the day we go home, Mother?" Very soon, I will be able to tell her, yes. Our stay here has been somewhat of a trial, though I have been grateful to the good doctor and his staff and their dedication to our treatment and recovery. Leonard's death had put us in such a severe state of melancholy that I feared we would never escape it. These past few years have been more difficult than any in my life. And my dear Marcella, after all that she has had to endure, has become my strength, my flame of hope. Clara could also be seen talking and singing to Marcy the doll by the staff of the hospital. In the year 1899, Clara was released from the asylum due to overcrowding, even though she was a convicted murderer. The staff had described her as charming and soft-spoken, characteristics that qualified her to be an ideal candidate for release during that time period. In addition, her crime was deemed a crime of passion and was ruled unlikely to commit the same crime again. Her trail went cold after that, with no one knowing her official whereabouts. So fast forward to the year of 1903, the legend of the Candy Lady begins. Children began to go missing near the Crane's old property. Children had stated that candy would be left on their windowsill while they slept. Sometimes there would even be notes left on the wrappers around the candy. Once enough children had gone missing, the townspeople started to believe that it was Clara, as they knew she had been responsible for her husband's death through poisoning of candy. They believed that she was somehow responsible for the missing children. It was not long until a farmer had found teeth in his fields wrapped in a candy wrapper. And then the town sheriff turned up dead. The sheriff was found with a pocket full of candy and a fork stuck in each one of his eye sockets. As no one really knows what became of Clara Crane upon her release from the asylum, it is believed that she still lurks around Terrell, Texas, leaving candy in the windowsills of little children as they sleep. And when they reach for the candy, she takes them, and they meet the same fate as the sheriff so many years ago. Another version of the legend of the Candy Lady is that she leaves candy on the windowsill for kids to indulge in once their parents are asleep. After they have eaten the candy left for them, she would take them into the night and feast on their blood filled with the sweet sugar of the candy. The legend of the Candy Lady derived from the disappearance of many children in the area, but there was no way to tell if the children were kidnapped or ran away. However, some kids that grew older confessed to eating candy left on their windowsill, so this led some adults to believe that the kids that disappeared were lured away and or poisoned. So this begs the question, is this legend a story that's crafted by parents to deter their kids from taking candy from strangers, similar to the Hug and Molly legend, which set the deter the children from staying out too late? Or is this a creepy way to kind of blanket a true crime story, or just to tell a fun ghost story? Who's to say? Or, of course, the Candy Lady could be real and could be out there to this very day. I really like this story of the Candy Lady because, one, it's one that I hadn't heard of prior to doing research for it, but it's really, really cool. My favorite type of urban legends, ghost stories, are ones that are rooted in true crime, and there is a record for it, so it's not something that was just made up. There's actual record that this happened. Now, if she's the one that's leaving candy on the windowsills, that's just up to legend, up to interpretation, but Clara Crane was a real person, and she did murder her husband. The one thing that stood out to me the most was that she had, of course, created a doll while she was in the asylum and named it Marcy. And in her mind, she was kind of trying to keep Marcy alive, most likely through her prolonged continued grief, understandably, grieving for her child. But it really amazed me that the asylum kind of still, even when they knew that she was, using this doll as a manifestation of her deceased daughter, she was still released. And then the trail just went cold after that. That was kind of suspicious. So it's just like, what if Clara Crane isn't the Candy Lady, then what did happen to her? Because it seems like she just disappeared once she was released, unless that was her, plan, just kind of live a quiet life and just fall into the shadows. Another part of the legend that I found really interesting was when the sheriff, Fred Springs, showed up. She was super aggressive with him. And then later, this legend states that the sheriff was found dead in the field along with a pocket full of candy and a fork stuck in each eye socket. So it doesn't state if it was the same sheriff that had arrested her. But back during that time, it most likely was the same sheriff, Fred Springs, since, most towns only had like one sheriff or one law official. Or a few law officials, I should say. So it's quite possible that it probably was Clara and was just upset that, that she ended up being put in the asylum and probably came back for a little revenge. Although it is gruesome, I'm not going to lie. When I had researched that part, I was like, that's a bit, gruesome. And it's, like I said, it's up for interpretation. It's up for, what you believe. Most of the stuff, like with the murder of her husband, it's factual, it's there in record. But everything else that kind of happened after her leaving the asylum, it's just kind of just like been filled in by legend and a story that's been told for generations. I said most likely by parents to kind of deter their children from taking candy from strangers. Which growing up, I would kind of hear or read urban legends or hear urban legends like this, and I would say, on Halloween, we willingly take candy from strangers, but any other time we're not supposed to. So it's just like, it's that gray area, that you're not really aware of. And as for the Candy Lady leaving candy, there's no set time frame as to when she actually does it. Is there a certain time of year? Is he leaving it on Halloween? There's a lot of questions that I have, regarding this legend. And another thing I was thinking is that, especially when all this stuff was happening, a lot of towns, kind of always looked for someone to blame. That even goes back to the Salem witch trials. When bad things happen, people look for someone to blame, and sometimes it's just easier to blame it on the town undesirable than to kind of just like filter through, and maybe there is something actually going on. Maybe there's like an outsider or someone within the town they know that was responsible for the disappearance of the children. But like I said, most people usually, especially back in those times, would blame, the, like I said, undesirables. Like I said, it even dates back to Salem. So, it was a common thing. And one last thing I found kind of funny was that people said that Candy Lady still exists and she still lurks around and leaves candy, which, could be possible if she's in the afterlife. But with the Clara Crane that the story focuses on, she was born in 1871. So she would be over 150 years old by now if she was still living. So, unless she's still out here leaving candy in the windowsills in her afterlife, I don't think it's the same Clara Crane. Or, she could have moved on, had a family, and maybe her descendants are finishing her life's work, who knows. But this legend of the Candy Lady from Terrell, Texas has possibly replaced my original favorite urban legend from Texas. And my original favorite urban legend was the train tracks or the railroad tracks. I'm pretty sure you all have heard some variation of this urban legend, but it's always been my favorite. So the urban legend goes that there was a bus full of young elementary school age children whose bus got stuck on the train tracks one afternoon. As a train was approaching, the train collided with the bus, killing all of the children. So fast forward a few years a few decades, I should say, out, or even to today's present time, if you were to park your car or put your car in neutral on the train tracks and dust like some baby powder or dust on the back bumper of your car and sit there in your car will be pushed to the other side to safety, and when you get out you will see tiny fingerprints on the back of your car. So those kids are still, there, making sure no one meets the same fate that they do. So they're kind of acting as guardians to drivers and other vehicles as well. So it is a bit of a sad story, but it is my favorite because like you can look it up on YouTube, online. People have actually tested this urban legend, and it's vital, it's real. And it's an urban legend that's pretty much, I think, all through the state of Texas. And there's also some states that have similar stories about helpful spirits at train tracks. Like I know like some train tracks they'll have like guides, they'll be there. Like if it's dark, they'll have like little lights appear to help light the way. And as they approach the light gets farther and farther away, but lights their way as they go. So just like a lot of helpful spirits out there. Especially when railroads were first built, they weren't the most safe. They didn't have the mechanisms that the modern train systems have today. So they were a little dangerous, and a lot of deaths did happen. But the one with the children is the most sad simply because they were so young, and at the same time, they're still there making sure that people don't meet the same fate that they do and making sure that people are safe. And that also kind of hones back to Hugging Molly from yesterday's episode, where she's kind of like, she's depicted as supposed to be a terrifying figure, but her main motivation seems like it is to protect or to, deter children from staying out too late, or protect children from any type of danger by frightening them so they don't put themselves unknowingly into danger. So it kind of has that same theme of protection. Because for me, outside from like the screaming in your ear, like, and the really tight embrace, Hugging Molly doesn't seem like such a bad figure. Because, at least she's just giving you too tight of hugs and not leaving poison candy in your windowsill. But of course, these legends are put in place, to kind of send a chill up your spine as you share them, and to embrace old stories, true crime, ghost stories, and in some ways, the whole culture of its origins. So that they're spread, throughout decades, throughout time, and even have a little bit added, a little bit taken away, a little bit changed, different versions. But these legends have stood the test of time for a reason. And it's, in my opinion, due to those frightening elements. And frightening elements is something that we know well and indulge in here at Beyond the Bizarre podcast. So come back tomorrow for more terror and more frights on our 7 Nights of Terror Halloween special here at Beyond the Bizarre. Until then, stay bizarre and good night.